It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks for joining me this morning. I know it's a little early on a Charleston Saturday, although you might be on your way out to the beach, getting out on a boat, doing something fun. The weather's beautiful, so thanks for tuning in and listening to me, where we talk all things real estate here on this program. If this is your first time tuning in, what I like to do, as somebody that's been in the real estate market since 2006 and have been in the top 1% of agents since 2009. I like to take a lot of national, regional, local news and then apply that to us here in the Low Country. I really enjoy sharing stories and experiences as somebody that's been in this real estate market, seen the ups, seen the downs, and then reflect on that and help you so that if you're considering buying or selling a home or investing in real estate, or if you just like to stay up to date with what's going on here in the Low Country, you've got that information and you can make some informed decisions. So before I get started, because I've got a lot planned for this show, if there's anything that I can do to help you, if you have any questions, comments, I'm live in the studio this morning, so feel free to give us a call here anytime. Ask any question. If something pops up as we're going through the show, again, feel free to give us a call here in the studio. The number here is 843-556-1250. 843-556-1250. And of course, if you don't want to call in during this hour, and you'd like to speak with me personally, have something confidential in nature you'd like to discuss, feel free to call me. My phone number is 843-345-1273. Or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. And on that website, you can take a look at everything I have for sale, take a look at what I've sold in the past. If you're considering selling your house, you can click on the Sell Your Home tab, and you can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission. So listingsincharleston.com is the website to do that. Let me tell you what I have planned for this show. First and foremost, I am, much like many other businesses, I have a coach. I have a real estate coach. And this same coach represents other top agents in other areas of the country. And once a month, we all get on the phone. There's about a dozen of us. And we talk about issues in our field, things that we can use and implement to grow our business, maybe ways of implementing a process to help us be more efficient with our time. Then we talk about just changes that we see in our industry, changes we see in our market. And that's something that I want to reflect on this morning, because it seems like there's a few things that are consistent across the board. Doesn't matter if you're in Charleston, you're in Charlotte, or if you're in San Francisco. It just seems like there's a shift happening, and I want to catch it, and I want to let you know about it, so that if you're considering buying or selling a home, you can take that into account. A little bit later on, we're going to go and we're going to go through Charleston stats, Berkeley County stats, Dorchester County stats. If you've listened to this program in the past, you know that I'm a big stats guy. I'm a big numbers guy. So I'm just going to tell you what's going on in our Tri-County area, talk a lot about price, but then I want to talk about, I'm going to tie all this together, and I'm going to talk about how it's affecting buyers, how it's affecting sellers, and how it's affecting investors. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about building wealth in real estate through real estate investments. It's something that I've done personally. It's something that my family built the majority of their wealth with. It's something that I have helped many families, many investors do. And it's something I want to talk about because I see a little bit of a change happening in our market over the past 12 months, and it's affecting investors. So that's what we'll be talking about. Again, any questions, comments, feel free to call me here in the studio, 843-556-1250. So let me tell you about this conversation that I had with some of the other top agents in the country as we get on our monthly mastermind call. One of the things that we discussed was that although the market is improving, and by improving I mean it's moving more from a balanced market to a seller's market, and of course I also mean improved in that we don't have to sit around and talk about how the sky is falling and how prices continue to drop and how people are losing equity and getting foreclosed upon and so on and so forth. Obviously, we have had, at this point, at least in Charleston, about 18 months or so worth of recovery. And if you look at 2013, when prices were up 13%, and then you look at our year-to-date numbers versus last year's year-to-date numbers, several areas, several neighborhoods, several sections of our Tri-County area are up another double-digit increase in pricing. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's great. But it can mean change, and sometimes in not necessarily a negative way, but it's just change. And I want to let you know what that change is and how it affects people. One of the things that we discussed was that, deals are becoming a little bit harder to get done. And here's what I mean by that. Anytime a market improves, you have more real estate agents that enter the business. The more real estate agents there are, the more room there is for error. The more challenging it is for a seasoned agent like myself to maintain market share, much less gain market share. And it doesn't necessarily muddy the water. I don't want to paint that picture, but there are more agents out there that either chose to get out of the business when times were tough, or they're choosing to get into the business for the first time because housing has recovered for the most part. Our economy is doing well, and it's a good time to get into real estate as a career. It just makes things a little more challenging. Although with every challenge, there's an opportunity so that when I go up against another agent, let's say they're not experienced, and I submit an offer or I receive an offer, depending upon who I'm negotiating for, and I can use some of those things to my advantage, and sometimes we can get a good deal, or we can get a better price, or we can get better terms by taking advantage of that situation and constructing a contract or an offer such that they really don't understand what happened until it happened. They really don't understand that we got a really good deal. They don't realize it until it's a ratified contract. Not my problem. I'm here to represent my clients to the best of my ability, and I play to win. So if I'm tasked with negotiating on my client's behalf, you better believe I'm going to do the best that I can to get the best deal possible. But it's becoming a little more challenging to get these deals done because there are more agents out there that are less experienced. They don't understand the market trends. They don't understand where pricing is going. And it doesn't necessarily just apply to getting the deal done. It could start at the very beginning of the process. Let's say you're working with an agent and you're a buyer. Buyers right now really need to be coached on what's going on in our market because it's a very, very, very challenging market if you're a buyer, depending upon where you're looking. I have a buyer that is one of my best friends, and I give him all the attention and time and energy that I can to help him and his wife find a new home. And their position is that they have a home that they would sell, but they're not going to sell their house until they find something worth moving into. They don't have to move. They just want to move. They just want to get into a different location and price point. So we've been out and about, and we've been looking for almost 9 months now. And every time we make an offer and it's contingent upon the sale of their house, the seller gets unmotivated to respond to it. And it has become a burden almost that they still own this home. And we haven't been able to help sellers understand that we are making a very strong offer. In fact, just a few days ago, we made a full price offer on a house. No closing costs, no home warranty. We're not asking for anything. We're going to give you the price that you want. And the only thing we want in return is for you to give us 15 days to sell our house. 15 days to put our house under contract. And once it's under contract, we all move toward the common goal of selling their property so they can buy yours. Should take no more than 45 days or so. Wouldn't touch it. Wouldn't even look at it. Haven't even responded yet. That's 2 days ago. Unbelievable. But that's the kind of position that a lot of sellers are in. They're getting a showing at least once a day, sometimes 2-3 showings a day. And the seller's position is that we're just going to wait around for a buyer that's more qualified. Well, the issue isn't that my buyer isn't qualified. It's that they're concerned that they're going to put their home under contract and the purchaser for the home they already own isn't going to be as qualified. So it's a very frustrating position to be in, and that's something that happens all the time in our market. People have to sell before they buy. So how do we position ourselves and create an offer that's a win-win situation for everybody. It's a challenge. It's all situational. It all depends on where you are and where you're moving to. Thankfully, this particular client I'm talking about lives in a very attractive area, and we just dropped the price this weekend, and I have no doubt that they're going to put their house under contract in the next week or so, because that's just the type of market we're in. I know that that's going to happen because of the level of activity that's out there. But if you're a newer agent, or if you're working with an agent that hasn't coached you, they haven't sat down with you and talked about what's going on in this market, I'm a big proponent of setting the right expectations before we get out there and before we start this whole process. And if you just sit down and you have a 20-minute discussion with your agent about what to expect, what the trends are in the marketplace, where should I be looking, where are the values, what's happening in this area, so on and so forth, you're going to be positioned for success. But a lot of agents, as soon as they get a client, they get a buyer, they get a seller, they have someone that they can now work with, they're so happy about the fact that they have the business that they forget to kind of do their job, if that makes sense. They forget to sit down and say, hey, I am thrilled that we're working together. I just want to sit down and talk with you about what's going on in the market so that as we move forward and as we try and find you a great deal on a home that you love, we've got the right mindset. I don't see that happening very often, and it's evidenced by the offers that I'm receiving. It's evidenced by the negotiations that I have with other agents. It's clear to me that they're not doing their homework, or they're trying to do their homework and they just don't have a good enough grasp on the market to understand where the true value is in the property. And understand this, it is very challenging in a market where prices are increasing to price properties correctly. And that's something that I'm going to get into in our next segment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about working with buyers and how this change in our market is affecting them. But I really want to talk a lot about sellers and what they need to know if they want to sell their property in the next 6 months or so. And then a little bit more, a little bit later on in the program, we'll talk about investors. We'll talk about investment property and how to build your wealth in real estate. So stick around. Again, I'm live in the studio this morning, so any questions, comments, feel free to call in. My number here, 843-556-1250. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 8 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. WTMA. Expert news and views on the Lowcountry real estate scene. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks again for joining me this morning. I'm live in the studio this morning, so if you have any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to chat about real estate related, feel free to give me a call here in the studio. The number here, 843-556-1250. If you'd like to contact me at any point throughout the week and discuss something real estate related, you're considering buying or selling a home, feel free to go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. Take a look at everything I have on the market for sale, search the MLS, look at what I've sold, and then if you're considering selling your house, click on the Sell Your Home tab, and you can learn a little bit more about my 59-day home sale guarantee, which very simply says, I will sell your home in less than 2 months, or I will sell it for half my commission. It is a very real incentive. So listingsincharleston.com is the website for that. When we took a break, or before we took a break, we were talking about the real estate market, and we were talking about the fact that I am a part of a agent mastermind where I have a real estate coach, and once a month, in addition to the weekly calls I have with my coach, of course, once a month I get on the phone with some of the other top agents in the country, and we mastermind. We talk about what's going on in our industry so that we can maybe catch some things before it's too late, so that if we see a shift in the market, we can alter our business plan accordingly and advise our clients accordingly. And when you look at everything going on in Charleston, at least, you look at all the monthly indicators, you look at the price, the inventory, the days on market, so on and so forth, every single metric that we use here in Charleston to measure the health of a real estate market is positive. Everything is growing. Everything is getting better, so to speak. Inventory is slowly rising in some areas, which is something that we need in some of those areas. Activity is picking up in those upper price point areas and neighborhoods. Rents continue to climb, which is good for investors, although there are less deals out there for investors. And then if you look at pricing is up across the board. Properties are selling in less time. They're selling for more money. They're selling for a closer amount to the list price. So all in all, our market is doing very, very well. I want to dig just a little deeper, and I want to give you guys an idea of what starts to happen at some point in the future once we continue to shift toward a seller's market. So, and I've already started to see this a little bit. I used to see this when our market was really, really hot. And of course, things fizzled out once 2008 rolled around and the market crashed. And then, of course, for the next 3-4 years, prices just plummeted. But here's what I'm starting to see. And again, on the buyer side of thing, I'm not seeing as many deals. The deals are harder to find, which means that for investors, you're going to have to get used to a little bit of a smaller margin. Every once in a while, you find those home run deals, but they're becoming harder and harder to find because the distress inventory out there is a lot lower than it used to be. In fact, when I did a show a few weeks ago and I looked at the distress inventory available for sale, only 5% of what was listed in our market was a short sale or a foreclosure. Only 5%. That's way down. If I looked at the pending sales, everything under contract, I believe it was about 12%. And one thing you have to understand about that is that short sales take several months to close. Sometimes foreclosures take several months to close, depending upon whether or not there are any issues with title. But they take a little longer to close, so that's going to be a big number. You know, once you put a short sale under contract, it stays in that pending category for 6 months, sometimes a year, sometimes 2 years. My God, I've had some short sales that have taken a lot longer than I thought. It's, you know, you can watch your kids grow old while you're waiting for the short sale to get through. But anyways, that's one thing that's happening with investors is that although rents are rising, prices are rising. More inventory is starting to hit the market, but it's not that distress inventory that we're looking for if you're an investor. Let's switch over to sellers and talk about sellers for a little bit. What usually happens when our market transfers over to a seller's market, there's just a lack of inventory out there, and sellers use that to their advantage. There's a plethora of buyers looking for what they have, and the buyers fight over it. They do multiple offers on properties. If you're a seller, you kind of have your pick of the litter, so to speak. But something happens along the way that I want people to be aware of because, as I had mentioned last program, if you're a newer agent, sometimes you allow your client to dictate the transaction. They allow the agent to listen to everything they have to say, but then follow everything they say, and they don't let the agent do their job. And it is very evident when we start to look at overpriced properties. I had a listing appointment a little earlier in the week that I walked away from, and I said, I'm sorry, but I can't help you, and it would be a disservice to you to put your home on the market at that price because it's going to be a frustration for you. You know, we're going to go through the process of maybe having your home shown, but we're not going to be able to get anywhere close to this price because it's totally unjustifiable. Well, they ended up listing with another agent, and the price is like 20% above what it should be. It's way off. And I'm sorry, but I'm just not going to waste my time with an unrealistic seller that wants a totally unrealistic price. It's a waste of time. And of course, you tell the seller that in a much more professional way, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. But you've got all these agents right now that are just waiting to pick up listings. They don't care about the price as long as it's somewhat close. And I don't know, I guess in this example, close is within $250,000. I don't get it, because this guy's going to have to spend some money to market this property. It just seems like a huge waste of time and money to me. But sometimes newer agents are willing to do that so that they can have a sign in the yard, so that they can start to generate some phone calls for themselves, so they can start to generate some leads, so they can get their name out there and say, hey, I've got this big fancy listing. Look at me. And a lot of them, you know, won't take a a property that's priced that high or that much above fair market value, but they'll take an overpriced listing. And what they're going to do is they're going to bank on the idea that at some point the seller's going to say, all right, what do we have to do to sell this house? Really, just shoot me straight. What do we have to do to sell? And then the agent, in their mind, just paint this mental picture. It's like they just scored a hockey goal and they're like, yes, I gotcha. Now I can actually sell this house. But, they bought in for a few months of answering the phone calls and going through the showing process and making sure that you're being well taken care of and communicated with. But they knew that they weren't going to sell the house at that price. So they're just waiting for the seller to say, hey, what do we have to do to sell the house? And then they finally get the price they want. I'm seeing that a lot. And I have never made it a strategy of mine to overprice listings and then wait for sellers to have some sort of change to their situation where they then suddenly have to sell. I would rather be the second agent that was interviewed with the other agent. The other agent took the listing. They didn't sell it because they overpriced it and they knew it. And then when it comes off the market as an expired or withdrawn listing, then they come back to me and they say, Brian, we really appreciated your marketing plan and we think that you can get the job done. We'd like to go with you this time. And then I end up selling the house. Doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes the situation changes and that agent that overpriced it gets the sale. It just is what it is. But I'm not going to sit in front of a homeowner and say, yep, I think I can do it for that. I'd be lying. I'm not going to put myself in that situation. I have more respect for people than that, than to look at them in the eye and say, yes, this is a good strategy. Again, it's all case by case. I'm not talking about a few percentage points here. I'm talking about 15, 20, 25, 30% overpriced, which is just absurd. So anyways, off my soapbox about that particular issue. Again, I'm live in the studio. If you have any questions, you want to talk to me, 843-556-1250. Let me tell you something else that's happening in this market right now. It's becoming more challenging for us as real estate agents to get price reductions on our listings. And the sellers that maintain an open mind and the idea that markets change, that, when we sit down and we have a discussion about the value of your house before we list it, that's the value at that point. If something in the neighborhood changes, we might have to change with it. And the majority of the time, it means a price reduction. It means that, hey, we set it at this price. We've had the showings, we've had the interest, but we haven't had the offer. Let's make an adjustment so that we can get that offer. What I'm starting to see is sellers are now doing price increases. We've already seen it, of course, with new construction developments where, take Carolina Park as an example. I think their pricing is up $75,000 or so, maybe closer to $100,000 since they initially rolled out those properties to be built. And we're seeing that across the board. New construction sellers are just not negotiating on price because every few months they're raising the price. Now they don't really negotiate on price, and that's kind of a separate discussion about new construction and how they negotiate, but they negotiate through incentives. And the reason they don't really negotiate the price is because they have to maintain appraisal values in their neighborhood. They'll say, hey, well, you've got $15,000 in upgrades that you can apply toward the purchase of your home. And if I were to go in and say, hey, why don't you just knock that off the price? They're not going to do it. They have to maintain appraisal values. That's what's going on with new construction. But if we're looking at just the regular resale market, usually what happens at some point, and one of the best examples of this is I could go on the MLS right now and I could, look at 3 or 4 different beachfront condos in Wild Dunes, and I can guarantee you that one of those 4 is going to have some sort of pricing history where back in 2004, it was $400,000. And then in 2005, it was $550,000. And then a little later on that year, it was $700,000. And then it kept going up and up and up and up and up, over $1 million for the same condo that you could have bought a few years ago for $400,000. And in some cases, it's so ridiculous that it gets to like $1.5 million for a property that's worth much less than that. But the crazy thing is, if they would have just dropped the price a little bit, they would have sold it for over $1 million. but they didn't, because at some point in a seller's market, sellers get greedy. They get greedy with their price, and they become blinded by the activity in the market, and they lose sight of the goal, which is selling the property. And it's, of course, the difference between the necessity of moving and the idea that, hey, yeah, I'll sell for the right price. Two totally different scenarios. Tell you what, we're going to take another break. When I come back, we're going to get into the figures associated with our market, the Tri-County area here. And then we're going to talk about real estate investment properties. So, again, live in the studio, give me a buzz, 843-556-1250. We'll chat about anything real estate related you want to talk about. And if you'd like to reach out to me, listingsincharleston.com, or call me personally, 843-345-1273. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. I'll be right back.
More stimulating talk on real estate matters with Brian Beatty next on 1250 WTMA.
The Big Talker, WTMA.
Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back. Thanks again for tuning in this morning to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Live in the studio, so feel free to give me a call, 843-556-1250. Would love to answer any questions or chat about anything that's of concern to you about real estate here in the Low Country area. Number here, 843-556-1250. When I left, we were talking about what's going on in our market right now and some of the changes that I'm starting to see and how we can use that information to our advantage so that if you're considering buying or selling a home, you have an idea of what some of the trends are. And I've talked a lot already this morning about if you're a buyer, what you're up against, and how it's just a very competitive market right now. I've talked about if you're a seller to not necessarily let all of this activity go to your head. It's easy to do. But again, everything in our market is neighborhood specific at this point. I say that we're in a seller's market, but there are plenty of areas in the Charleston Tri-County area that still have a large supply of inventory, that are great for investors, that aren't so good for sellers. And obviously some areas of our market were hit harder than others when we had that downturn a few years ago from 2008 to 2011, parts of 2012. So there are still plenty of areas for both buyers and sellers to really flourish and get that really good deal. But one thing is for sure, there are less and less of those quote unquote good deals out there. It's just what happens when markets start to recover and we move from a buyer's market to a seller's market. So what I want to talk about is what's going on in the Tri-County area. I'll break it down by county. This is, anybody listening, if you want information on a certain area, this is your time to call in, 843-556-1250. Let's just start with the market in general. And I think what a lot of people are really interested in is just the price. Everything else that I talk about really justifies movements upward or downward in price, like things like inventory and pending sales and difference between list price and sales price and days on market, so on and so forth. But I think what most people are interested in is, hey, Brian, just give me the brass tacks here. What's going on with pricing? And here's what's going on with pricing. If you look at year-to-date stats for the Tri-County area and you compare that to the same amount of time in 2013, overall pricing is up 8.2%. That's pretty awesome when you consider the fact that in 2013, prices were up 13% from 2012. So in plenty of areas of Charleston, we've seen properties increase 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% in value. I know my own personal residence, I bought it as a short sale in December of 2011, and it took 9 months, by the way, and I bought it from a seller who was a real estate agent, which just goes to show you that sometimes the agents just don't have control over that process. It was emotional, to say the least. But we got in, we got a great price, and now, after having made some renovations, our home has increased in value about 40%. And I have to imagine that other people are in the same scenario. So there are plenty of people out there listening right now that at one point, a few years ago, wanted to sell their house, but they couldn't because they didn't have the equity. They just couldn't get the price that they wanted. And I'm here to tell you that if you haven't checked in on the value of your home in the past 12 to 24 months, you might be in for a big surprise. So if that's something I can help you with, if you're considering selling your house and you just want an idea of what's going on in the area, I'm happy to provide that to you. The easiest way to do it is to meet and have me walk through your house and assess your condition and location and upgrades and all that good stuff and tell you what your house is worth. But I can almost just as easily just have a conversation with you over the phone and say, tell me what kind of upgrades you have. Let's compare that to what has sold over the past 6 months. And here's ballpark what your house is worth. Easy for me to do. Takes 5 to 10 minutes. Do it all the time. Feel free to give me a call personally, 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. Happy to do that for you. No charge, no cost, no obligation. Getting back to what's going on in our Tri-County area. Let's look at Charleston County. It's where the most activity in our Tri-County area is, of course. We've got about 4,500 properties for sale. And that's single-family detached. If you look at single-family attached, we've got 1,320. But let's go back down to that brass tacks number, which I think everybody is most interested in. That's price. The median sales price for a single-family home in Charleston County this year versus the same time last year is up 12.7%. Almost exactly the same percentage as it was at the end of 2013 compared to 2012. So we continue to have this amazing amount of momentum that affects Charleston County, and a lot of it is due to just a lack of inventory. There are some areas, too, that really are contributing to these numbers. When I look at downtown Charleston, when I look at Mount Pleasant, when I look at some areas of West Ashley and James Island, those areas have such little inventory that when a buyer or when a new listing hits the market, it gets flooded with buyers. I'm going through it right now on some of my listings and with some of our clients that are looking to purchase a home. It's very interesting to see, and it's just interesting to see how it's changed over the past few years. If you look at the condos in Charleston County, condos are up almost 7% in terms of price. So I could talk about all the other stats, but all the other stats are good. They're selling faster, they're selling for more money, they're less negotiable. So all good stuff if you're a seller. If you're a buyer, it's a bit tough out there. So you really need to work with somebody that understands this stuff. Berkeley County, pricing is up 8.5% from the same time last year. If you look at the condos and townhouses, price is up 15.3%. That's amazing. It really is starting to recover in Berkeley County. And Berkeley County used to be one of those areas where I would look at investment properties there, and you could buy a townhouse for 50, 60 grand, put a little bit of money into it, and rent it for $950 a month. And when we start to look at return on investment, which is something I'm going to talk about last, it was pushing out huge numbers on a return on your investment. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on, but it looks like pricing in Berkeley County is really starting to kind of catch up with Charleston County. It seems like Berkeley County and Dorchester County always lag behind Charleston County. That's because there are just less properties that transact on a monthly basis. If you look at Dorchester County, pricing is up 5.5% if you're a single-family home. And then I was looking at these numbers this morning, and I said, there's no way that could be right. A lot of what I'm reporting this morning is median sales price. So if I look at the condos and townhouses in Dorchester County, and I look down at my little fact sheet here, it says that pricing is up 21.2% in Dorchester County if you own a condo or a townhouse. But then, of course, I look at the number of closings we've had. We've had 179 closings so far this year, so it's not really fair to use a median sales price. If you look at the average sales price, it's only 3%. So again, it's all neighborhood specific. Any statistic that I give you, I mean, hey, it's great to hear. It gives you an idea of what's going on in our market, but it's, take it at face value because it really depends on your area and on the price range in that area to really determine what kind of market we're in and what the trends within that market are. So that's why, it becomes a problem at times for clients that are working with agents to really get a straight answer on what's going on with pricing and trends in that market. Because what agents will do is they'll pull up everything that's sold for the past 6 months. With the click of a button, our MLS generates this report that says, here's the average price per square foot, here's the average days on market, blah, 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 all averages. And then they say, yep, it looks like, based on what's sold in this neighborhood, that the average price per square foot is $175 a square foot. So let's just apply $175 a square foot to the value of your house, and that's probably right around what it's worth. And I have harped on this time and time again on this program, on that is not how you price property. You have to look at the individual location within the neighborhood as it compares to other homes in that same area. You have to look at condition. You have to look at upgrades. You have to look at it all. You have to make individual adjustments for those items, just like an appraiser would, if you really want to effectively price a home. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We're going to take a break first, but last part of our show, we're going to talk about real estate investment properties. It's something that I'm really passionate about, something I've helped a lot of people do. And again, live in the studio, would love a chance to speak to somebody, help them out in any way, shape, or form. Feel free to give me a call here in the studio, 843-556-1250, or reach out to me personally if you have any real estate concerns or needs. Go to my website, listingsincharleston.com, or call me, 843-345-1273. Thanks again. We'll take another break, and we'll be back for the final segment of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show is on 1250 WTMA. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. This is our final segment. We're going to talk about real estate investments this time around. If you have any questions, if there's anything that I've said that you'd like more information on, now's your time to give us a call. I'm live in the studio. The number here, 843-556-1250. And if you have something confidential in nature, you're considering buying or selling a home, and you'd like to work with me, I am a real estate agent during the week. I've been in the top 1% of agents here in the Charleston area since 2009. So feel free to call me, 843-345-1273. That's my cell phone. Or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. So we've talked about what's going on in the market this program, and we're in the final few minutes of this of this show, and I wanted to transition over to real estate investment properties. When I got into real estate, which was in 2006, I was a new agent, so I didn't really get to take advantage of the market from 2003 to 2005. You know, I didn't have any past clients that I could resell property to. I had to get my feet wet, and I had to figure out very quickly as a 21-year-old what my value proposition was to clients. You know, how am I going to go out there as a young guy and help people buy and sell real estate? How am I going to sit in front of them or sit next to another agent that's 30 or 40 or 50 with 10, 20, 30 years of experience in the business and get the business? Well, obviously, when I got into the market, things started to change. And then, of course, the market crashed. So I decided that my value proposition to others was that I was going to be an expert in short sales and foreclosures and in analyzing real estate investments so that I can help people buy them, and then I can help sellers sell their property to investors. And how do we position those properties to sell? What's the information that those investors need so that we can attract them? And I want to give you guys some examples of some of the things that I've done over the past few years, and I'll keep them very brief because it's, you know, one thing I've learned in doing this show for almost 2 years now is that it's very difficult to just rifle out a bunch of numbers and math problems and have people understand. So what I'm going to say is this: there is still opportunity in our market to flip property. There is still opportunity in our market to buy and hold property and use them as rental properties. In fact, it's still a great time for it. What I think people need to understand is when we look at flipping property, I want you guys to have an idea of what's reasonable, what really is happening in our market right now. What can you expect if you're going to go in and flip a property? And I think that shows like HGTV and these shows on Bravo, they really romanticize the idea of flipping property because they don't really dive deep into the numbers. They don't talk about, all the closing costs associated with buying and selling the real estate. They don't talk about the commissions. They don't talk about how much it costs to hold the property. All they talk about is how much they bought it for, how much money they spent, and how much they sold it for. And you see this big number that's a lot bigger than it should be because there's a lot of things that haven't been taken into consideration. So here's what you guys need to know. I'm going to give you the quick 3-minute guide on investment properties in the Charleston area. Number one, if you're flipping a property, if it were me, and this is what I say to my investors, we're not going to look at anything that doesn't make at least a 20% return on your investment. I just don't think it makes sense to risk that much capital for anything less than a 20% or more return on that investment. Flipping property is risky. It is not just, oh, hey, I think I'm going to go flip a property today. You've got to know what you're doing, and you've got to work with somebody that knows what they're doing, or you're going to stand to lose a lot of money. And at the, best case scenario, if you don't do it well, maybe you break even. But then think about all the time that you've put into that process. And God forbid you do a lot of the labor yourself, because guess what? You just worked for free. In fact, you just lost money because you weren't working. You were working on your house. That didn't make you any money. So if you're going to flip a property, when I look at properties, I say to investors, hey, we're not going to look at anything that nets us less than a 20% return on our investment. There are plenty of opportunities out there for that. We just did one. We bought the property for $65,000. We sold it for $122,000. Factor in all of the closing costs, the repairs, so on and so forth, and she made 28% return on her investment. It was a great deal. Happened in just a few short months, and then we're on to the next one. And her strategy is that she's going to keep doing this until she can buy her primary residence cash, and maybe then she'll continue to do it. But we're out there, we're making money. It's fun. Now let's transition over to the buy and hold properties. What I say to investors, and it's changed, what I say now is that if we can look at something where, and I use cash on cash return because it's just an easier way for me to calculate the potential of an investment. But here's what I say. If we're going to buy the house or buy the condo, we're going to put money into it. Let's factor in the purchase price, the renovations, and then let's look at the potential for rental income once all that's done. Once we take that annual rental income, what you stand to earn on an annual basis in ownership of that property, of course, we have to deduct from that taxes, insurance, maintenance, how long it's going to take you to rent the property, unforeseen expenses, so on and so forth. Are you paying for utilities? Blah, 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 regime fees. That's what gives us our net rental income. And then when you divide that number by the total acquisition cost, which is the purchase price plus improvements, that number should be 10% or higher. When I work with investors, I don't want to go out there and just buy property that's earning them 5-6% on their money. I think we can do better than that. We will do better than that. We're going to look at least 10% return on that cash investment. In other words, if someone gave me $100,000 and said, Brian, I want 10% on my money every year, I'm going to have to give them $10,000 back. Right? It used to be closer to 15%, but pricing has increased and you can't find those deals as much as you used to be able to, but they're out there. So if real estate investment is something you're considering, if you're sitting on money, you're afraid to invest in that stock market that's at a really big high right now, consider real estate. Let's have a chat about it. Let's see if it makes sense for you. Happy to walk you through that process. And if you decide not to go forward, at least you had a conversation about it. And again, happy to do that for anybody that's interested in buying, selling, investing in real estate. Feel free to give me a call. So I tell you what, we are out of time. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate y'all tuning in. And I always want to make sure that I take a little bit of time each show just to say thank you to everybody that entrusts me with their real estate services. I appreciate being on this program. And if there's anything I can do to help, feel free to give me a call. Again, this is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks again. If you want to reach out to me, 843-345-1273. And you can also visit my website, listingsincharleston.com. Thanks again, Charleston. Have a great rest of your weekend.
another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning from 8 till 9. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.